So intersections between these two industries aren't simply confined to the surface, they occur and are often mediated through access to groundwater. So how much do agricultural and coal seam gas water interests actually directly intersect? Directly, probably not very much and probably not very often. Essentially, the gas sector and the agriculture sector are accessing water of different quality, from different depths and different geological formations. To wrap some numbers around that, of the 12,000 bores that exist in the Surat Basin, 300 extract water from the Walloon coal measures, from which the gas industry will be extracting its water. So the direct intersections aren't significant. But intersection of interest doesn't require access to common aquifers. So indirect intersection of interest in water is where the action is likely to lie. So let's just look at some of those. As we've outlined, coal seam gas extraction necessarily involves the extraction of large quantities of water. And this could have some negative impacts for agriculture. I've put some of the negative impacts in red, some of the potential positive ones in green. We'll just step through them. There will be aquifer drawdown of agriculturally significant aquifers as a consequence of coal seam gas. In some places, that could see aquifers have drawdown or have their levels drop by tens of metres for tens of years. In other places, it could lead to aquifers having a drop of level of several metres for several hundred years. A consequence of groundwater and gas removal is groundwater depressurisation. Now that can alter the rates and direction of flow within aquifers, which can lead to lateral mixing of aquifers and changes in water quality. So that could have an impact on agricultural water supplies. Contamination can occur via several routes. One is the groundwater mixing just mentioned. The others tend to require what we think of as an accident or fault. And they include a hydraulic fracture that extends beyond a coal seam, a faulty well, or an industrial spill. Now, the risk of contamination from hydraulic fracturing and faulty wells isn't considered to be great, partly because it shouldn't happen often, but also because if we think about depressurisation, we're actually sucking water towards coal seams, not pushing it out of coal seams into fresh aquifers. So the risks associated with hydraulic fracturing and contamination through faulty wells are not considered to be high, though further work is required to really quantify that. The surface spills that I mentioned may not differ greatly from those that the agriculture industry already knows about. Associated subsidence, the removal of water and gas from coal seams actually causes them to compress. And they'll compress by about 5% of the depth of a coal seam. That's unlikely to propagate to the soil surface because these coal seams are usually 400 to 1,000 metres underground. So it's considered that it's unlikely that subsidence will propagate to the surface, and agricultural impacts of subsidence are therefore considered to be minimal or negligible. Salt. The water within coal seams contains, on average, about 6 grams of dissolved salts per litre. So if you're bringing up the quantities of water that we described earlier, the Surat Basin could expect to be bringing to the surface between about 500,000 and about 850,000 tonnes of salt each year. Following treatment, that salt is separated from freshwater and requires disposal. And there are a number of methods for disposal of that salt, and the agricultural impacts of that salt disposal are expected to be negligible. There may also be some positive impacts of coal seam gas industry's removal and use of water. Access to water that was previously too deep or too salty for agricultural use, following treatment, may be available for beneficial use in agriculture, such as irrigation. Alternatively, associated water that's brought to the surface and treated could be used to actually offset or substitute existing agricultural withdrawals from aquifers, reducing the impacts of agriculture on already stressed shallow aquifer systems. And because water volumes, locations and durations aren't clear, neither are the cost-effective levels of investment required to actually have water use infrastructure. So there remain some challenges in the beneficial use of coal seam gas water, even when technical issues can be addressed. No worries. So what's the balance between the pluses and minuses? It's actually not possible to quantify those arising from the intersection of the gas and agricultural sectors. Partly that's because, as I've mentioned twice now, the rate and ultimate scale of the industry isn't certain. It's also not certain what the rate and scale is at which costs and benefits will accrue, and to whom. So that makes assignation of pluses and minuses tricky. Technical challenges remain for a number of hydrological parameters, and it's also not possible to quantify pluses and minuses because many of them actually defy reduction to facts and figures. Important as they are, facts and figures will not by themselves provide all the solutions to questions about the intersection of the gas and agriculture industries. In many cases, disquiet at that intersection is based on what's likely to be a clash of values or symbols. And it's not to trivialise that clash by describing them as values-based or related to symbols, because humans hold those very dear. It's one of the things that separates us from the lower mammals. So there's many such contests, and they include, in the agricultural space, discussion of public versus private benefit, the sanctity of agriculture versus industry, rural lifestyle versus industry development, and resource access rights versus autonomy. And these are things, as I say, don't simply reduce to facts and figures, but are largely derived in our value sets. And it's not clear at this stage, so there are likely to remain as challenges to some degree until the community, industry and government are satisfied that the trade-offs between these types of challenges can be met with something approaching mutual satisfaction. And it's not yet clear how the agricultural and gas industries, how close they are to that destination. Thank you.